Meanwhile, President Trump is exiting the White House with his personal worst job approval rating in the latest Gallup poll. It makes him the only president in the company's 80-plus year polling history to never break the 50% threshold. The most recent numbers show just 34% of Americans approve of the president's job in office, 62% disapprove. When looking at his average approval rating, President Trump is the most unpopular president in Gallup's history by over 4 points, sitting behind Presidents Obama, Ford, Carter, and Truman at 41.1%.
Well, and that leaves both the Bushes and JFK and Ike and Johnson, everybody else higher than him. Mark Leibovich, what I have found so fascinating about Donald Trump regarding these poll numbers is he's a guy that if he had just talked about the economy, most likely he would have stayed over 50%. He would have gone over 50%. He would have stayed. He couldn't do it. And even when it seemed like he got breaks, even when there was this pause and the playing field seemed set up for Donald Trump to run through this massive hole in the line while we continue on football, and I'm a dumb guy and I do my football analogies. He has a hole wide open that he can run through. He decides to turn around and run toward the other end zone. You look at what happened the day after. He felt completely vindicated after the Mueller report is dropped and Mueller testifies. When things are breaking his way and his supporters are running victory laps, Donald Trump picks up the phone and then decides to call the president of Ukraine, blackmail him with military support that the Congress has already approved in return for him digging up dirt on his political opponent. This is a guy who just could never stand success of any kind.
It's true. What is remarkable about his poll numbers is that so much of it was self-inflicted. I mean, you think of a couple of inflection points. I mean, one was when the coronavirus started in March. Everyone was saying, okay, well, this is a lot that no president would ever envy. It's a really, really challenging situation. And immediately Donald Trump, as seems to be his nature, was thinking, oh, boy, now I'm really in trouble. And I mean, I'm just going to deny that this is happening and hope that no one notices that there's this virus that's ravaging and killing thousands of people, every week. And so he could have very easily just sort of stepped back. And if he was capable of the kind of sort of leadership and empathy that a lot of people sort of wished he did, even people close to him from the very beginning, it could have been something he not only survived, but actually was enhanced by, as a lot of governors across the country have been, as a lot of public figures across the world have been. So obviously, I mean, there was that. And then even after the election, I mean, November, say, 6th, 7th, after Biden was declared victor, this could be, if he were just to sort of act like a normal losing presidential candidate and be gracious and engage in a normal transition period, he probably would, I mean, his approval numbers would probably be about 10 points higher than it is now. And he would be extremely well positioned, probably going forward, to be the Republican nominee in 2024. He still, could be, but certainly, I mean, his posture would be very, very enhanced, more so than it is now. And a lot of it was just self-inflicted.
Time and again, you're exactly right. I mean, he'd be set up to travel across the world, go to all of the countries with autocratic leaders that he cozied up to, could have made a fortune, because I know that's what's important to him. But he also would have been a conquering hero among the 75 million people who voted for him. You talk about opportunities. And now, again, he gets in his own way. There are these self-inflicted wounds. And Willie, this presidential race, let's look at after the presidential race, but let's look at the weeks leading into the presidential race. Even after that horrible first debate performance, if he had just focused on the economy, if he had just kept it kept it as sane and rational as he could have. And people say, oh, well, he's not capable of that. Yes, he did that the last 10 days of the 2016 campaign, which is why he won. Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.